Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whenever the fuck you're watching this episode. It's another episode of Backyard Chains brought to you by Backyard Sports Media. My name is Raul Herrera, and with me back to back, I got Aaron the Goose Gossage with me again tonight. Aaron, good to see you, buddy. Can
Yeah,
you hear
thanks
me
for having me
okay?
on here again. Such short notice too. Is the connection good there?
Yeah, I think maybe there's a little bit of a lag, but not too terrible. Anyways, we'll keep going though. And so, anyways, man, first off,
Okay,
congratulations! You got your
thanks.
first podium finish of the season, which is already an accomplishment. We talked about, how you had a little bit slower start to the year than you did last year, and you were really looking forward to taking that momentum from 303 into OTB. And honestly, you did just that. I mean, you know, um, we'll get into the results of the round or of the tournament a little bit later on in the show. But first and foremost, congratulations on the podium finish and lights out golf, man. Lights out golf. So hats off to you there, and you should be really proud of your performance this weekend. So, um, what are your thoughts?
Mm, Sorry, you're breaking out just a little bit there. Let me see if I can refresh this.
Okay,
Oh, gosh. So yeah.
working through some technical difficulties here with Aaron as he's probably moved into a new Airbnb. He's getting ready for Beaver State Fling this weekend. So really grateful to have the chance, even if that's all we get is a couple minutes, just to see him. Anyways, I'm looking forward to talking with him again. So for those who aren't familiar, please go back into last week's episode where we met with Aaron initially for the first time on the show, and we talked about his win at 303 as well as a few other things. I asked him some pretty good Cat Facts questions. It was a great conversation. So, Aaron, looks like we got you back. Screen's frozen. Oh man, I'm hoping that we got him back.
Yep,
Let's see. How are you feeling? Are you there?
I'm feeling good.
All
Yep,
right.
I'm here.
Okay. I think it's working.
Is that not any better?
It's better.
Think we're
It's
good?
better.
Okay, perfect.
I think the video's lagging a little bit. However, the audio seems to be not. So we're good there. So um, I know you missed my introduction. I'll briefly recap it. Your performance at OTB this last weekend was fantastic. You got your first podium finish of the season. We talked about the slower start to the year you had this season in relation to last season, and you still took the momentum from 303 and applied that to OTB, and it worked out really well for you. So, regardless of maybe not taking down the W like I know you would have hoped, you should still be very proud of that performance because it was lights out golf and it was very dominant, and the entire card. The field was on their heels the whole time, and that's quintessential Aaron Gossage disc golf. What we saw last year at Worlds, what we saw last year at OTB. I mean, so be very proud of that. Can you hear me? All right. I think we've got a video lag again.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I definitely taken a lot of positive things away from the tournament. So still feeling good about things. And yeah, just the more I can put myself in that position, the better. Can you hear me?
100%.
Sorry.
Uh-oh. I think we've got the video lag again.
Oh, sorry. The internet is always spotty just because you never know what you're going to get at different places everywhere we travel to. Um, I don't know if it'd be better. Let me look at this real quick.
Okay. We're going to keep trying. Anyways, so I'm going to jump right into the first point, and that's got to be. Oh, he's back. All right. Let's try one more time. How's it going?
Try one more time. I turned off my Wi-Fi, so I'm just
Oh,
going off of
now it's
data here.
perfect. There's no issues.
Okay, sweet.
Okay, so you managed to hear my intro. I
Yep.
got your response, and I'm glad to hear that you're chin up because again, it was I'm sure it was a tough ending for you, and I hope that we talked about having to be able to clean that slate before you move into the next round. Even sometimes to the next hole, the next tournament. Yeah, again, man, it was fantastic golf. Obviously, congratulations to Emerson Keith, his first Pro Tour win. So that's awesome. Um, so overall, you needed to, you wanted to feel confident in your putt. I feel like for, I mean, for all but the last few holes, you did exactly that. And now you're getting ready for Beaver State Fling. So what's the mentality coming into this weekend? Um, you're leaving OTB with a podium win. You've still got momentum with you, right? And so, how are you feeling going into this weekend?
I'm feeling really good. I think the main thing I've really got going for me is my drive's just been feeling super solid. Disc's been coming out clean, right where I want it to go. So that's going to be like the biggest strong suit of my game. And then, like you said, I had a lot of confidence in my putting first, 2.5 rounds. So if I can just kind of like keep that going, really just know that I know how to throw these shots. I practice them, thousands and thousands of times. So yeah, especially the first round of a tournament, I'm just going to try to go out there, not have too many nerves, just play a nice, relaxed, casual round. Compared to that last round, definitely got a little bit more nervous coming down the stretch, seeing that I was in first place, stuff like that. So yeah, my goal is just kind of have fun. It's a great course, beautiful area, and yeah, incredible people. So yep, I think mainly just having fun, relaxing, and yeah, playing good golf.
Always got to do that. I feel like it's got to be tough sometimes whenever you're trying to chase that podium or chase that cash or whatever it is, to really kind of sit back and take it in, take the moment in, and realize like, hey, I'm throwing plastic through the air for a living. Yeah, it's a grind, but man, what a life, doing what you hopefully what you love, and yeah. Anyways, it's pretty awesome, man. So overall, what are your thoughts on? I mean, I'm not even talking about out the last half of the final round. What are your thoughts on your performance in general for OTB?
I was really happy with my performance overall. I felt like I was playing really solid my first rounds, and had just like a couple unlucky breaks where I felt like I threw good shots and didn't get rewarded really. But I pushed through at the end, got a couple birdies, 17 and 18, to finish out a solid round. And then the second round was a little bit weird. I started off feeling a little funky, wasn't throwing great shots, and I did manage to get lucky on a few and score in the first half. But then again, I pulled it together, pushed through at the end, finished the round really strong, and then even kept that momentum going into Sunday. I knew I needed to come out, keep playing my game, throw really good drives, put myself nice and close, take a little pressure off my putting. And I was able to do that all the way through like hole 10 ish. And that's when, I looked at the scores. I saw that I was up by quite a bit. I saw Gannon was pushing back, and I got a little bit tense. And from that point forward, I just lost a lot of my trust in my putt, a lot of that confidence. And my drives are still flying well. I still threw, I mean, I missed my drive on 13, but I threw a great drive on 11, 12, 14. 15 just leaked a little bit out of bounds, but 16 as well. I mean, just all the way through there, throwing really well and giving myself opportunities, but just not able to capitalize. It's also a little bit windier too. So not
Yeah,
just the
definitely.
fact that, yeah, it was super calm the first couple days, and then the wind really did pick up that final day. So adding that in just makes the putting a little bit tougher for sure.
100%. Yeah, for sure. It was pretty fortunate the first couple rounds were the conditions. And then that final round, similar to Jonesboro, right? Where you get this like abnormally nice weather for the first two rounds. I mean, sure, I'm sure I know it was a scorcher, especially for Stockton this time of year, but um, but overall, good wind conditions. And then Jonesboro shows up in round three, similar to what happened in Stockton. And so, yeah, that's always tough. You've dialed in the putt. You've done what you needed to do. You mentioned something here towards the end that I was interested in asking about, because you hear them talk about it in post-production coverage, you hear them talk about it in the live coverage, but whether or not those players are checking UDisc. So in those moments, I mean, how do you typically keep tabs on where you're at in the rankings, or do you intentionally try to avoid that? Because it sounds like maybe that kind of assisted, unfortunately, you getting in your head towards the end of that tournament.
Yeah, so it's a good point. So firstly, I tend to not look at the scores much. So like round two, I didn't know where I was sitting. I didn't know I was in first until I put out on the last hole. Um, but there's always points where you need to know where you are. And for me,
Right.
I got to hole 10, and that was the first point where I really needed to know where I was in relation to everyone else.
Hmm.
So I knew I had Emerson by two there, and I was like, hey, I've got a 28-foot putt. Do I lay it up? Do I run it? And so that's when I checked the UDIS to see. And I will say that that did add to that stress, that those nerves and everything like that. And my goal moving forward is to do a little better job of knowing where everyone is all the time and just kind of like always live.
Oh no. Right in the middle of the monologue, we lost him. Oh man, this was getting good. So if you're just tuning in, stand by. I'm sure he'll be right back. Um, Aaron's talking about, excuse me, he's talking about his putting stroke going into the final round. He'd been performing lights out, obviously, and then going into hole 10, he checked UDisc. Whenever he checked UDisc, there you go. Just trying to fill everybody in on where we were at while you join us again. So you checked UDisc, and so the mitigating measures you're taking here is to check UDisc more often, to be more aware, situational awareness, right? Is that kind of the goal, to have that security, so you're not having those, surprise there last final 8 holes of the course?
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big believer in that if you have to do something some of the time, you may as well make your routine around that a little bit. Just make it
Mhm.
all the time. A good example of that is like scorekeeping. They'll make you keep score here and there, and a lot of people hate doing it. So they're just like, you know what? I hope I never have to keep score. And then my position is just kind of like I don't really mind doing it. So if I just keep score every round, then it becomes part of my actual routine, and I don't have to think about it. So I'm going to try to make the looking at scores similar to that, where I just like check scores all the time. So then I'd always know
Mhm.
where everyone is, and I don't get hit by that like blindsided. Oh, you're in first place, and what are you going to do now? And then you get like nervous and stuff like that because of it.
Yeah, exactly. See, that makes sense. Um, yeah, the surprise can sometimes throw you off, but I mean, another really good point too is, like you were saying, you reached a point where you needed to check the U disc, and that's not just from a like, oh, whether or not I'm doing okay. It's a, I've got a bonus birdie opportunity, or maybe I've got that 28-foot putt into a headwind, or a stiff left to right, right to left, whatever it is, and I've got to make a decision on whether or not I can justify laying up. Um,
Hmm.
or maybe you run the putt to try to gain a stroke on the field or whatever. So yeah, from a strategy standpoint, it's important that you have that awareness. So interesting, two-part point there. Hmm.
Yeah.
So you reach that point, you make that decision to go ahead and lay up a putt that, everybody, post production said, is he going to regret this later? Is this something he's going to think about? So hindsight's 2020. What do you feel about that? Do you feel like you should have ran it, or do you think the outcome may have been inevitable with Emerson playing the lights out golf that he played? I mean, what are your thoughts
So just kind of like looking back on it, I was six down through 9 holes, and then
there?
like I said, I had 28-foot putt on hole 10. If I par out from that point forward, I win the tournament. So
Ouch.
that that's how like well I was playing at the time, and I knew that going into it. So for me, I made the right decision on hole 10. It was a really tough putt. The wind was hard to read, like you said, it was a headwind, a little nervy, and I was like, I don't want to lose a stroke here when trying to gain one. So obviously I
Exactly.
wasn't going to lose a stroke there. So I just was like, layup is definitely the play. The next hole is it's kind of where things go downhill a little bit. So like on hole 11, I've got an even shorter putt, one that I should make, almost all the time. And then, if I make those putts too, if I make the putt on 11, make the putt on 12, it doesn't matter. I can par out from that point and win the tournament.
Right.
So yeah, there's just a lot of things like that where I don't regret any of my decisions. I just regret the performance. I regret the missed putts, pretty much. I think other than that, I was happy with a lot of my other shots.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate takeaway is that the last little bit of putting, not even all of it, because you had some good putts. You had some, you put yourself in position to have the easier tap in birdies. I mean, you did great off the tee. Again, back to back, you were fantastic last year and off the tee here. So you're a top 10 finisher off the tee. So it's true. I mean, we read the stats last week. Be sure to check last week's episode for that reference there. But so either way, I'm glad to see that you're chin up here because again, it happened. We talked about last week the cameras too. That level of pressure, and so you seem to handle it well because I got to see a lot of goose on coverage this weekend, and that was awesome. Especially talking with my buddies who I played disc golf with and they're like, "Oh yeah, did you watch it this weekend?" I was like, "Yeah, I just interviewed Aaron this past week." And so, they're tuning in now and watching the show. So it's cool. Anyways, so I'm fortunate to have you on the show to be able to, one, just brag to my friends that I get to talk to a pro, but somebody who's already starting that trend upwards, which we talked about last week is necessary for you to be just as competitive as you were last year in Worlds, but also, it's who everybody in the field knows that you're capable of. Everybody knows that you're dangerous. And so, sometimes get out there and prove them right. It's awesome. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the world rankings. Let me get that pulled up. Okay. So UDisc world rankings, dominance index here. So Calvin drops a little bit. He misses another podium. We're seeing the downward trend of Calvin Heimberg. Apparently, I've seen a couple of those comments out in the field that it's disrespectful, honestly. But the big news, and we're going to get into this a little bit later in the show, but Ricky Wysocki only a couple points behind there in the dominance index. But we're going to talk about his return and what that means for the field. So Gannon Burr, solid performance there. Eagle McMahon did not have a solid performance there. He struggled. Simon Lizotte as well. We saw some emotions there in post-production there on Jomez, and that's always tough. So random question here. What do you do in those situations? Because I feel like I haven't ever seen you really kind of have these exaggerated, frustrated moments like Simon Lizotte throwing his disc down or, having the fallback and whatever. So what do you do at your worst, whether it be on camera or not? We'll start there. There's the first question.
So I'm usually composed in those situations. My temper usually doesn't get the best of me. I do have times where I let my frustrations out. I'll usually say something loud, shout or, throw my birdie bag. That's always kind of satisfying because I get a big puff of chalk. But my main goal with my outbreaks and stuff like that is to not affect anyone else on the card. That's kind of my big goal is just like keep it to myself and see if I can stay composed well enough to really not affect anyone else's play.
Yeah.
It's a weird situation though. So I was talking with Ezra and Brody about this, and it's tough because we don't really have like a great outlet for things. I don't know if that makes sense, but Brody was like, "Yeah, there's nothing to break in disc golf. Like you can break your putter in golf, or you can smash your tennis racket in tennis, or something like that." And none of those things are like super, have a great look or anything like that. But it's just weird how people let out their emotions. And Brody made a good point that I thought was interesting. That laying on the ground is how some people do things, and it doesn't look great in my opinion, but it's kind of acceptable versus like if you like splash the chains on the way out of the basket, you might get a courtesy violation called on you or something like that. So it's just weird how certain things are accepted and certain things aren't accepted, and they're all a bad look at the end of the day. But it's just kind of weird what we're allowed to do and what we're not.
Right. So let's just ask that question too, though. If someone were to be on a card where someone were to be that upset, lay down, have their moment, Could someone call a courtesy violation on that and be justified in doing so?
So my biggest concern is if it affects someone else's play, what you're doing, then it could be called. So a lot of times, if it like carries over to the person is still, making a ruckus about the thing while the next person is trying to make their shot, something like that, then of course go ahead and call it because it does actually affect someone else's play.
Mhm.
And then there's certain things that are just like, I don't know, they're kind of weird. Simon, smacked his disc into the ground, and
Mhm.
none of those things bother me. So like all of these things, I'm like, it doesn't affect my play, but it makes me wonder a little bit. Like where does the line of like a practice throw come in there? Where does, all these other things where it's like because Simon has a reputation of being a really respectable guy and everyone likes him,
Mhm.
he's almost never going to get called on a violation there. Versus
Right.
if Nico does some of the exact same things, there's a chance he gets called just because
Yeah.
of his reputation. So
Yeah, that's a good point. That's an excellent point. Certain people, it's similar to how, like, I think basketball might be one of the ones, football for sure is like that, where certain teams or players will get passes. You're going to call roughing the passer on Tom Brady 10 out of 10 times to protect him, right? So that makes sense. Hmm. Yeah, I guess that does apply too. Man, disc golf
yeah,
is
and
way more intricate than I realize sometimes.
there's even another level there too, where if you have two people on the same card that don't like each other, they're
Hmm.
far more likely to call each other on the, a courtesy violation. Versus if you have four players that are all friends, no penalty is ever going to get called. So because it's a self-governed sport where the players are actually the ones that have to make these calls, it
Right.
makes weird situations where people, to follow in the rules, they need to call their friends on, violations just as much as they're calling all the other competitors.
Also true. So, I mean, you do seem like, especially in regards to people that are to the people in your card, you seem very obviously friendly, but calm, like more of a James Conrad esque rather than a Nico, right? You're pretty cool, calm, and collected for the most part. And again, even at your worst last weekend, you were having these moments where you could tell you were frustrated. I never felt like you were disruptive, right? Like you had your moments, but they were very contained, and you could, I mean, it's tough to watch, honestly. And I hated that you were going through that, but I never felt like, wow, he's really being dramatic, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like it was G-rated compared to how I would probably act. I think my favorite response in general is just the clap because it's always a good or a bad thing. Like
Mhm.
Calvin Heimberg, for example, does them for both. He'll drain a 60-foot putt downhill in the final round of Jonesboro to keep the lead, and you'll see he'll make the clap and run towards the chains and whatever. But then you'll see the same thing where he misses chains by an inch, and you'll see the clap of frustration. So I feel like that's always a good kind of go to. But my favorite question, and I do love asking this to a few different people, Big Germ, for example. But one, have you ever called somebody out on a courtesy violation?
Just to touch briefly on the clap, I think the clap is a great way of doing things. I'll slap my legs sometimes too,
Yeah,
and
that's
I
a good
think
one too.
it's just like it's something that's not super disruptive for anything. It's a
It's
little like
brief.
sharp, little like, oh, like wake up call. That stung a little bit. Let's get going here. Like, and it works like you said both ways. With the if you're down on yourself, you're up on yourself. You can use
Hmm.
it both ways for sure.
Yeah.
As far as rules go, I have never actually called anyone on a rules violation before.
Hmm.
I, um, I struggle with the rules thing because I love giving people the benefit of the doubt. I also don't want to make enemies, which is a tough thing in the situation. This last year, I've really been trying to make an honest effort to call everything as I see it, and but that leads to a little bit of like bias on my own part. I find a lot of times if I'm playing with someone that I'm a friend with, and I know it's bad to say that, if I see them make a foot fault or something like that, a lot of times I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, you foot faulted on that last, shot, maybe watch your feet for the next one. And then in my opinion, like on the next one, if they do, foot fault, then that's when I would call it. So it's kind of like that, just like, hey, I can tell that you're not really watching this, and I'd like you to pay attention to it because it could be an issue later when in reality, I probably should just call them on it to begin with. Because
Yeah,
It's
bit
a
of a
weird,
moral
yeah.
compromise there, or conflict rather.
And then on the same token, I've had a couple times where someone on my card was being somewhat disruptive, and it was definitely affecting me or someone else on the card. And both times I just like told the person, "Hey, this is disruptive. I would appreciate it if you stop being so dramatic, loud, whatever it is with that situation." And I felt like both people took it very well. They didn't realize that it was being an issue for everyone else on the card. And they were like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'll back off on that." And so both cases, it didn't really seem like a situation where I needed to call someone on a courtesy because the
Mhm.
effect got across without doing so.
Well, that's good that you get to have the communication without it being official, right? Like you can have the verbal warning before an official rules violation. So, we've talked about Nico, but there's a few people. There's Nico not only with his attitude but with his time in putting. You see that with Gannon Burr. Earlier this season, I was even talking to Terry Miller um, about Joel Freeman. He's like apparently a notorious guy to kind of have bad rounds and make it miserable for everybody. I've heard a list of names from a few folks that I don't think I need to dig too far deep into it, but I'm sure you're familiar. And so, I mean, good on you for not having to call the rules violation. But um, what I asked, who was it? Was it Luke Humphreys? I think it was Luke Humphreys. Gannon Burr's on your card. Um, he's now taking 35, 40 seconds per putt, 2, 3 putts in a row. What are you doing at that point? You've never had to call a time violation or anything like that?
So I've been in this exact same position before, and like I said before, I've really made a point this year, especially, to just like call things as I see them, take a very unbiased perspective on it, and try to be truthful. And when I say that, more or less, what I mean is like when someone throws out of bounds, I'll be the first person to get up there and be like, "This is where I think you went out of bounds," and in that way, no one is just like, "Oh, I thought it was here. I thought it was here." It's like, "Hey, this is my honest opinion. You can take it or leave it. You can argue some way or another." But I like to give that honest opinion. And so last year, I think it was Preserve last round. I was playing with Gannon Burr, and he was playing so well. Like he was on a heater, playing out of his mind. He had birdied so many holes there. And about halfway through the round, he started taking 50 seconds to a minute on every shot.
Oof.
And I didn't know what to do. And this is a great example of just like, what are you supposed to do in the situation? I know that a lot of people that I've said, "Hey, we're taking too long. We should speed up pace of play here," just destroys their confidence, their mental game after that. And I didn't want to be that guy on that round because I
Mhm.
wanted to see him succeed. So in that round, I just let it happen. Afterwards, I look back on it and I was like, you know what? I should have said something. And I think that a lot of people talk about how it's okay to take, 40 seconds on different shots that are tough. If you have like a wind switch while you're putting and you like, take a little extra time, or if
Yeah.
you're in the woods, you can't decide what shot to throw. All those
Yeah.
situations, completely reasonable, in my opinion, to take extra time.
Right.
Um, if you're doing it on every shot, I think it is a little bit unfair to everyone else. So that is a situation where this year, if that were to happen to me, someone was taking too much time on the card, I would just go up to them to begin with and say, "Hey, you're taking a little bit too much time here. We should improve pace of play, and it shouldn't be a problem." And then if they continue to take that much time, that's when I would call them on a courtesy violation.
So in a courtesy violation, like for time, it's not like a foot. It's not like a footfall, right? Where it has to be seconded.
I would have to double check the rules on that. I know I'm a certified official, but that's one that I
I was
I
just
don't know
curious.
exactly which one which one it is for
I had
sure.
no clue that you were a certified official. Okay, interesting.
Well, yeah, everyone on Pro Tour has to be to play all these events. Um,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
yep.
sorry.
And so technically, we should all know every rule, but a lot of us struggle with that sometimes. So that's one I need to brush up on for sure.
So it's definitely a tact issue too in the approach because it's not the message, it's the delivery too. Like you can certainly cite somebody on a rules violation or time, um, and just maybe catch them between holes. Like, hey, took a little bit too long in that last one, speed it up a little bit. I think Luke let it happen one time with Nico, and the very next hole he goes, "Hey, you need to hurry that ass up." so and so sounds like it went over well. I know that they're friends, so
Right.
Um,
I will say one other thing on that issue is that the taking too much time thing is not just about having an advantage over other players. It's all about pace of play on the course.
right.
So there are a lot of times where this person being slow on your card and you being like, it's not affecting me, I'll just let it pass. That's okay, but it slows down pace of play for the rest of the tournament, and that's not acceptable. So I'm a big believer in pace of play in general, and it's one of those things where I am so much more likely to let someone get away with taking too much time if we're keeping up with the group in front of us, just because then it doesn't affect the rest of the tournament. So it's one of those weird situations where a lot of times I'm okay with players taking 40 seconds on a putt or something like that. If they walk fast down the fairway, they get to their lie in a reasonable amount of time and are actually like
Yep.
improving speed because of that. If they step up and are ready to putt before their opponent's taken or their card mates have taken the putt out of the basket, that gives them an extra 5-6 seconds where they get to go through their routine that I don't worry about. So I think that pace of play and keeping up with the card in front of you is a big important thing, especially at the pro tour level.
Definitely. Yeah, because I mean, we've seen it, at least as spectators, we've seen it happen before where holes slowly start to pile up and pile up and pile up. And usually it's your trickier par fives where you're gonna have half your card scrambling every turn that goes through. But yeah, I mean, sure, pace of play can it's like the slow car in the fast lane. Like over time, you're gonna create traffic. So um
Exactly.
anyways, so let's jump back into these world rankings real quick because there's one last update we need to look at, and that's the man who's up 12 spots up to 21 in the world rankings after that lights out performance last weekend. Congratulations, man. I don't know. Again, we talked a little bit about the impact of the world rankings, but hey, to say that you're, now top 25 in the world, it's pretty awesome. I imagine it's a pretty humbling feeling as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good feeling to be back in that mix. I know that I can play at that level, so it was nice to put a full tournament together and really, show everyone that I can play at the top level.
Yes, absolutely. And here at Backyard Sports, we know for fact that this man can play this good, and so it's good to see it come to fruition. It's awesome talking about it with you, and then seeing it in action the following week. It's cool getting insight into the psyche of the man himself that's going to be out there on coverage and out there making shit happen. So, um, Gannonburg catching up a little bit, and we're going to jump into the Pro Tour point standing. Gannonburg catching up a little bit. Couple drops. We got to see Kyle Klein drop a little bit. Isaac's up one. James Proctor breaking into the top five, which is great. Ezra, man, he had a tough go there. I think I watched round one. He had some struggles. Um, Tough finish for him there at OTB. Paul Macbeth, um, still on break, and he's fallen a spot. Chris Dickerson didn't perform and dropped a little bit, but funny enough, is actually up in the world rankings. And so up 11 spots is the man himself. Again, now he's top 25. And now he's top 25 sitting in the Pro Tour point standings. So, man, overall, I mean, solid weekend for you. You got your first podium of the year. You still got the rest. I mean, that's a great way to continue the Western leg for you since you played 303, but to start the Pro Tour Western leg, I mean, it's a great start. And so Beaver State Fling, you've actually played here a few times. I'd imagine. Is that correct?
No, this is my first time on the course. A lot of people asking me how I compares to years past, stuff like that. So this is the first time I've ever played it. Course is amazing. I love it. I've heard that they've made some great changes, but they've got a lot of really solid par fours. Apparently, they've taken out a lot of the fluky, shorter par threes, and we're left with just a bunch of, really solid holes. Overall, I'm a big fan of it. One thing I will say about the course, which I thought was kind of interesting, every single hole is a righty backhand. And I don't know how many people like pick up on that, but definitely if you're a forehand player, you're like, wow, I don't throw a single forehand tee shot. This is kind of wild. But that's just kind of like something to point out. It's just kind of interesting. So people have their different course designs. As far as the rankings and everything go there too, it's just like one way of like viewing who's the best player at the moment with the power index. And I know that it's kind of strange that some people will like move up even though they didn't play. That's because it's based around this method of like if you win, if you beat someone, if you like beat them at the tournament, then you'll like get points on them, whereas you won't. So if you don't play the tournaments, it's kind of like a net neutral, and then everyone else is just kind of moving up and down, and you're staying stationary. And then on top of that, I will say a player like Ezra did not have the best weekend. It's the way it goes sometimes. And one of the good things about our sport, one of the interesting things about it is that it's so much better to have really good finishes, and having bad finishes is not that bad. Nobody's, like, oh, this person won the tournament one week and then just didn't cash the next week. You can just come back from that so easily, and it's all about those top finishes. It's all about getting your name up there on the leaderboard, and nobody really cares if you drop down, lower. So I will say, it was a little surprising to see a couple of those players struggle on that course, because it is, like Simon, for instance, he won the tournament last year. He should do really well at that kind of course, and just kind of not his weekend, I guess. Same with Eagle, a couple of those players. So overall, definitely some strange finishes from everyone. And then Isaac Robinson, I think, is going to be the guy to beat coming up here pretty soon. He's on a 3 in a row, I think, podium finish streak. So definitely watch out for him. And he's done it on a couple courses you wouldn't expect it on. So.
Yeah, he's been kind of out to prove that he's not just a woods golfer. And, and it certainly shows. It's 3 podiums in a row, 4 top 5 finishes in a row, 5 top 10 finishes in a row. The man is on a tear. So it's pretty, definitely solid. This is also a man who just took home a majors. So yeah, definitely going to be the man to beat. And I feel like he's got a bone to pick with the field and with the folks behind the keyboards calling him a woods golfer. And the man can bomb. He does wonderful things with flippy discs, and it's pretty cool to watch. He's not I wouldn't say that he's Aaron Gossage level arm strength, but he can get out there and he can play shots. The man can call his placement, and you can't even argue that. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And then one of the interesting ones is that I think Ricky's going to be actually playing this tournament. He's on my card first round, so it'll be interesting seeing how he's playing back from. You hate to see someone missing the season because of an injury, because of the flare-ups, stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see him back on tour. It'll be great for him to be back. Definitely different energy added to things. So. I hope he does well. I hope he's right back to where he left off.
Yeah, 100%. I'm looking forward to seeing peak Ricky Wysocki. And like I said, Hydra Discs, Hydra Wife Ricky Wysocki is back. And so, I'm curious to see how long Calvin Heimberg stays at the top of that world rankings now with Ricky Wysocki back, going to jump back into the saddle, because I don't imagine that it's going to take more than a round or two for Ricky to get back into what we know as Ricky Wysocki, the man who absolutely terrorized the field last year. And so he was already well on track to take home his next world championship, throughout majority of the season and his inaugural season back with Trilogy. So definitely going to be interesting to watch him go. And then he's going to be on your card. So are you going to be on a filmed coverage this weekend? Uh-oh. Lost him again. Dang it. Well, we're going to wait for him to come back. But like I was saying, folks, Ricky Wysocki is back. He's going to be checking into Beaver State Fling this weekend. As Aaron just said earlier, he's going to be on the card with him this weekend. So that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to see if that's actually going to be film coverage. I haven't seen if that is or not. So please feel free to educate me if you already know the answer to this question. And so, Beaver State Fling. We've got some good momentum here for our man Aaron Gossage. If you haven't already checked out the store, get on Discraft, check out the Aaron Gossage store. You can also follow him, Aaron_Gossage Disc Golf, on Instagram. And he's back.
Sorry about that. I think my phone's
You're
overheating
good, man.
just a little bit, making it a little tough.
Oh no. Oh, good, man. We're soldiering through this bad boy.
Yep. Sorry about that.
No worries. So right before you left, I was asking if you're going to be on film coverage this weekend for round one.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And so
Oh no. We're losing him again. Dang it.
is it working? No.
You're frozen and I'm not getting any audio. It's kind of coming in broken.
Okay.
All right, he'll be back. We'll keep it going. Anyways, so yeah, like I was saying before, man, Ricky Wysocki's back. I'm curious to see how quickly he bounces back, but I cannot imagine that this is going to take longer than a round or two. I can't imagine. It's going to be a quick bounce back. I don't necessarily think he's been entirely avoiding the field, going out and getting some work in. I know he's been limited, with his injury and his recovery through his flare up and everything like that. So obviously disc golf is better with him in the field. So it'll be cool to watch him back at it again and see how quickly he bounces back before he gets his first victory of the season. Aaron, welcome back.
Sweet.
All
yeah,
right.
I was just saying
So
that.
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just saying on the coverage. I'm on Chase Card, so I don't think there'll be any post production of me playing, but I am on the second card, so there should be some live coverage of me playing, especially if I play well. It kind of comes down to that. It's just
when you play
people
well.
to play well.
We're manifesting this.
Yeah.
When you play
Exactly.
well, Aaron. That's right. Talk your shit,
call.
Aaron. You're good. I don't know if you know this, but you just got a podium finish at OTB last weekend. All right, so you need to remind yourself of that. You were that dude right now going into this weekend. So Ricky Wysocki's back. That's terrifying. Obviously good to have him back in the game, but still terrifying because he's Ricky Wysocki. And anyways, so I do want to jump into the most important part of our episode before we get too much further into the episode. So every episode this is a veteran-owned podcast, and every episode we dedicate to a fallen service member in our Folds of Honor sponsor segment we call our Salute to Service. This episode is going to be dedicated to Army Specialist Jose Amancio Perez III, who passed away May 28th, 2003, serving during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was 22 years old from San Diego, Texas, and he was assigned to 6th Battalion, 27th Field Artillery Regiment in Fort Still, Oklahoma. He was killed when a convoy was ambushed in Taji, Iraq. Army Specialist Jose Amancio Perez III, we have the watch. And now for the same old difficult transition, the worst one in the show. It's the toughest. We'll move on to the back nine here. This one's kind of a tough subject. It's been a very hot point of contention. You got to see a lot of the exposure there at 303. I hope that we still got you. How's the audio?
Still there?
Yep, still there.
Is it frozen?
Okay.
Sweet.
I just don't want it to cut out at this part because this is kind of like we're at the peak of the show right here. So you got to experience some of this Natalie Ryan drama at 303. And then she plays round one after winning a ruling in favor of her, and then the PDGA or Disc Golf Pro Tour, which one was it, won their appeal.
Right, I believe that's the disc golf fighting this. Am I still
Okay.
there? All right.
Yeah,
Try
you're
one
in
more
now.
thing. It's all right.
No worries.
Yeah, the internet's just a little spotty, so we'll give this another try. So my big take on the whole matter is that it's such a touchy issue, and it's so hard to like find a place to like stand or to figure out what the right thing is to do. My big point that I would like to get across, that I think is just good in general about everything, is that this is an issue of like the actual pro tour, and this is not a specific issue of Natalie Ryan. It's not an individual. So there's so many people out there, especially I witnessed it firsthand at 303 Open, where there's just a lot of hatred going on. A lot of people just coming out talking about how much they hate having these people in the sports, going out processing them specifically, sending her bad DMs, stuff like that. And it's not her fault. She's within the rules. All the season last year, she was playing in the FPO division, and that was allowed. That was something that anyone is allowed to do, just like any other thing with the rules. So it is not on her. It is on the ruling that the PDGA and the Disc Golf Pro Tour has. So if you have those problems with those specific things, the best place to voice your concern is with the actual organization and weigh into those things. It got extra dicey this past week with the actual court ruling and the appeal and everything that went on there. And it was such a wild, I don't know, ride the whole way, because it was kind of like maybe like we were wondering if there was going to be like a winner and a loser coming out of this whole situation. And at the end of the day, it was just like everyone lost. It felt like
Everyone lost. Yeah.
I was not super happy about that. But at the end of the day, it was one of those situations where I feel like both sides are fighting tooth and nail for it. So that's what they're after. They don't want to let the other side win. So I don't know if that makes sense. So it's just like this was how it had to go down because of the way everything was taken care of. It's such a weird situation. I think it comes down to at a crux that there is an FPO division, and it is a protected division because as a whole of society, we've decided that that FPO players, are born and they have genetic differences than NPO players, and because of that, they should be competing in a division that is separated from each other so that they have a competitive chance to play against people of their own, skill level. And it's such a tough thing because then it leads to this problem of, at the moment, the women's division is just kind of like a poorly defined, like what exactly are we saying makes up that division. And that's kind of where you have your take. Some people go at it from, it should be biological from birth. I've heard people talk about testosterone levels. I've heard about bunch of different options, and none of them are perfect. So overall, it's just like my message I would like to get across is please try to protest peacefully and to the correct places, and try not to ruin anyone's day with your own personal beliefs. I'm a big believer in just doing everything in the right way, with the right reasoning behind it, and trying to be as reasonable to both sides as possible. It's possible to have a debate about these issues without getting angry at each other.
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great way
kind
to
of the
put it.
position we're in. Get mad at the rules that allow what you don't want to happen to happen. Yeah. And I think that you can be frustrated at the way something is turning out and not have to cause harm to another human being. With that, it's probably not uncommon. I mean, my position on that is just pretty it's pretty one-sided. Like I don't necessarily think that I don't think that Natalie should be able to compete in the FPO because of the biological differences. And that's, it's not a knock. It's just a statement of fact, right? And that's where I'm at with it. And now, with that being said, I'm not going to outwardly, publicly, or directly hate on this person as a result of it. That's not the way that needs to be handled. And if I was going to act on it, it would be to, maybe as a member of the PDGA, have a vote, voice my opinion on something, right? And that's my ability as a paying member of the PDGA. But other than that, another perspective of that too is that as a male, that ain't got shit to do with me, dude. And that's a part of it for me too, is that like,
it's a
should we
great
be
point
hands
to
off
make.
or do we get involved?
Yeah, to me, it is one of those issues where it's like, I have an opinion, I have, a voice on this matter, and it's like,
Mhm.
but it's so distant from the issue as a whole that I can't relate to Natalie Ryan's position, and I can't
Mhm.
relate to any of the, biological FPO players' position. To me,
Mhm.
I'm distant from both of them, and it's hard for me to like really have a good perspective on where this should be going. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there are too many people that have this like very like, oh, I know exactly what I know and I'm right and everybody else is wrong kind of perspective
Yeah.
on life.
Mhm.
Rather than, I think it's important to just go into every situation you get into, listen to what someone has to say, listen to their side of the story, try to be empathize with them, try to put yourself in that position and see what they actually have to say. And then after you've done that, you're welcome to make whatever decision you want to make, just as long as you've given it that full thought and tried to understand at least what's going on in every position.
I feel like the comment section of the world has completely removed us from the ability to have discourse or dialogue, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at with it, is that nobody really wants to have no one's allowed to have a difference of opinion anymore, regardless of where you stand, whether it be on the political aisle or in the case of, Natalie Ryan versus PDGA sanctioned rules. Um, so it's a tough position to be in. As a male, I don't necessarily care because it wouldn't affect me. Also because I'm not necessarily a competing player. But yeah, but my only response to that may be a little sarcastic, but I'm not seeing any biological females competing in MPO.
Right. No, there's so many like issues to go on there. But going back to kind of the comment section thing, I noticed that at a lot of the disc golf pro tour, like I don't know, YouTube things, stuff like
Hmm.
that, they just stopped the comment section.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to some of the people that work on that stuff, and they're like, it's just a nightmare having to go through that comment section and delete everything that contains hatred. That
Right.
is just, it does not follow our guidelines for what's acceptable comments. And I hate the idea that you can't comment on a video because it's such a good way of fans engaging on different things. But
Right.
if the fans can't follow the guidelines of these things, and that being said, like you're welcome to comment on the
Right.
issue. You're welcome to talk about Natalie being in the division. You just need to go through the guidelines and be like, oh, this is something I can say. I can say I disagree with her being here, but
Exactly.
you can't just blatantly go out and hate on different people,
You
especially in
can't
those
go
public
0 to
forums.
100 and go straight to derogatory,
Yeah.
or to threaten, or to, belittle, just, yeah, it's just. And then of course, because of that, as a fan, I enjoy every time, kind of perusing through the comments. And, even if it's something simple like watching live coverage last year of Aaron Gossage get that skip in on hole one at OTB, like it was fantastic. The comment section was wild, right? It was all celebratory, like, whoa, that was nuts. Everybody celebrating together. And then you get the polar opposite of that this weekend.
Yeah.
And because of that, the masses have to be punished for the actions of few, right? And it's unfortunate as a spectator, as a fan of the sport, as a diehard fan of the sport. I don't think that we should have to be punished for that. But it shouldn't happen in the first place. It shouldn't happen in the first place. Don't be a dick. It's that simple, right? Like at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all have feelings. I know you won't say it, Aaron, so I'll say it for you. Don't be a dick. I don't think I've ever heard you cuss, so I'm just going to assume that you don't. But by all means, if you want to, let her fly.
I appreciate it, but I'm not usually that kind of. Only in the heated moments when I'm throwing a really bad shot or something like that.
Did you have any curse words on the final round?
Oh, I'm sure I did. They're usually under my breath, though.
Yeah, yeah, understandable. Honestly, again, you composed yourself so well. Like, I just 90% of the people, like, I've seen Paul Macbeth throw bigger fits. You know, we all know the
Yeah,
most
I appreciate
attitudinal
it.
player on tour is James Conrad. Some of those kicks and punches are just outrageous, and he should really be held accountable for his actions. It's a bad example.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, of course. We should all strive to be disc golf Jesus. So, other than that, you've got the whole rest of the Western leg of tour, and then from there, short break on to Europe. I mean, listen, big things in the horizon here for the Goose. So you've gotten a chance to play the course. First round's tomorrow, so this is your rest day. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't really take rest days. I usually
Oh,
I usually throw like a lot of shots my first practice round, and then
hmm.
I'm like sore for the next 2 days. But then usually the day before the tournament, I'm just like I'll play like a full round and throw some shots, but it won't be quite as intense as like those first couple days. And then by the time the tournament rolls around, I'm throwing so many fewer shots than I do in my practice rounds that I'm pretty much rested up for the next week. So definitely played around in today. I'll probably go out and get some putts in. But yeah, get just feeling really solid, getting ready for the tournament tomorrow.
Do you travel with a basket? That way, if you have the Airbnb, you want to just go home, you can just get some putts in the backyard or something.
Yeah, I stay with Ezra and Brody, and all three of us have a practice basket. So I'll usually set mine up in the yard, and then maybe we'll go to like the field, and they'll have one of theirs there. So just anywhere we go, pretty much there's a practice basket. We can make it work.
Awesome. Yeah, I know obviously Ezra had a tough weekend last weekend. Brody's been pretty outward about his struggles this year. And so want to see him do good, man. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about Brody Smith, whether you like him or love him. He's good for the sport. And he is a good sport. He's enjoyable to watch. He's entertaining. He's an overall good person. And then on top of that, his off the field coverage is also great to watch. Listening to his podcast and all of his appearances that he does with Yuli and what he's done with Foundation and even Paul Macbeth back in the day, like that is all, it's all good stuff for the sport. That's all we want to do is grow, right? We watched in the podcast world, we saw Pat McAfee turn a simple show on YouTube into a multi-million-dollar deal with ESPN, right? So we just saw that happen this week. So it's fantastic stuff. We all want to grow our prospective sports. And as a disc golfer in the community, maybe not a touring professional, it's awesome to watch all of the celebrity personalities, Bert Kreischer, Ben Askren, lots of people jump into the disc golf world and really advocate for it. There's a video circling around of 2 Chainz who learned about disc golf and kind of fell in love with it. And then of course Beaver State Fling this weekend. It's the reliving the Philobatros throw in. It's one of the greatest shots of all time, maybe only rivaled by the Holy Shot. I mean, it's awesome to be a part of the sport right now. So positivity, man. That's all we need to be doing for each other. So
Yeah,
are
for
you a
sure.
putter going into or what does your practice look like leading up to the morning of the tournament? Your first round one, how early are you getting there? How many putts are you trying to get in? Because like Luke Humphreys, for example, not much of a practice putter. What is your regimen typically game time morning?
Yeah, for me, the putting's the biggest thing. Sometimes it takes me 5 minutes to find my putt and be like, oh, yeah, there it is. It's feeling dialed. And sometimes it takes me an hour. So a lot of times, especially going into like last week, going into the final round lead card, I got there about 3 hours early just because I had a little bit of
Whoa.
anxiety about how my putting was feeling. I went out, putt for 45 minutes. It was feeling good. And I was like, okay, now I can relax for a little while. Now that I found the putt, I can like take a breath of fresh air, and then usually about an hour before my round starts, I'll definitely get my whole body warmed up, throw a bunch of shots, and then I'll putt up until maybe 5-10 minutes before the round starts, and then throw 4 or 5 shots in the net just to get the body rewarmed up, and yep, and then tee off.
So you're throwing into a net.
Yeah, usually when I warm up to begin with, I will throw out into a field, but then
Mhm.
like right before my tee time, I'm just trying to get my arm re-loosened up pretty much.
Yeah, stay
So I'll
loose.
just throw 5 forehands, 5 backhands into a net, and then I'm ready to go.
Interesting. Yeah, we've kind of had the full spectrum on the show. We've had the folks that have showed up and probably showing up 15 minutes before, and then the other folks like yourself who show up 3 hours before and want to make sure they got everything dialed in. So in your putting rounds, are you looking at like, are you going as close as 10 foot, or are you staying kind of circling longer?
So I changed my putt a little bit, around like 15 feet, just to have like a little easier like tapping kind of putt. So
Yeah.
whenever I'm putting, I'll try to like make all my tap ins as well. So it's not like I just like pick them up and then go back. So
Oh
that
yeah.
that is a big point for me, is that I have struggled with those in the past. So just to make sure to get those reps in as well. And then usually I'll start right at like 20, 25 feet, get that really dialed. And then I can move out longer, especially once you start getting that feel. It's easier to move farther and farther back, just get the putt popping farther. And definitely want to make some circle two putts. Those are very valuable, just to give yourself some good bids there and not leave them too far from the pin. So overall, just go through everything. But I definitely have had tap in problems before. So that is one thing I will make sure to make a point of warming up.
Something you talked about the tap in. I completely forgot to mention that. I noticed that a lot on coverage this weekend is that you almost have this like Matty O kind of upward putting stroke where it's a little bit higher up rather than your traditional putt where you're coming in right below your waist. Your arm doesn't ever go really above your chest.
Right.
And then but whenever you're doing a tap in, it's a little bit higher from your initial point before you start your release. So, well, is that just a comfortability thing to try to force that nose angle down? What's your method there?
So the big thing there is I'm comfortable with that putt up to. I wish I was comfortable with it longer than that, but that's about the distance where I'm like, oh, I'll make the putt with that. The biggest thing is that baskets don't catch well when they're coming up the base. When the putt raises, especially and drops. So I have a very nose down putt where I throw it and that at the shortest level, the shorter, a lot of my disc is going up when it's hitting the chains, and that leads to a lot more spin. Especially on elevated baskets, 15 feet and in, I try to do that like nose down, just putt the disc from high to low, so it's coming down when it's going into the back.
I see. He's going the PG safe route. It's the way to go. It's to guarantee that you're going to have the nose angle that you need to putt towards the bottom of the basket. I get that. I like that. Interesting. So Matty O is the immediate guy that came to mind whenever I saw the putt. It was very, like I said, it was a little bit higher up on your chest, and you're definitely much more kind of leaning forward down into the basket. So it's smart. I mean, getting your body behind the angle that you're trying to push into that putt, because that's definitely a lot more of a push putt than a spin putt for sure, I think. So yeah, interesting. I like learning a lot of the nuances of the sport, man. It's interesting to watch, especially unique to the player. Now that I've gotten to, especially this weekend, we got a chance to watch a lot of coverage on you.
Yeah, for sure. The putting thing's always been.
Oh no.
So.
I think we're losing him again. Hold on. Wait for it.
We're losing me.
He's coming back.
Am I back?
Yeah, a little laggy, but I can hear you fine, which is good. So, anyways, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show again, Aaron. Thanks again for joining us. I hope that your connection's strong enough here at this point to get some parting words. If you had anything you needed to plug, I've got your socials here at the bottom. While in one of our little intermissions, I was talking about your shop there on the Discraft website. Be sure to check it out. Lots of goose gear. There's just a cool, there's just a beanie that just hit the market. Be sure to check that one out. Aaron, do you have anything else for us? Oh, dang it. I mean, what a gangster exit though, just to be like, you know what? I don't need to tell you nothing. Come see it on camera. If you haven't watched the OTB Open, I'm sorry for the spoilers, but be sure to check it out. Get on YouTube. Go check out Joe Mez if you want to watch the post production. It's solid. Um, you get to see the Goose performing very well and having some shake up there at the end. And unfortunately, it was costly, but a great win from Emerson Keith. It was overall great golf. The conditions toughened up on round 3. I'm hoping that we get a chance to have Aaron back on the show again very soon. But it was important to me that on the heels of having our show last week, where he was identifying some of the issues that he was having, some of the struggles, getting some of the yips with the putting, especially on camera. Unfortunately, we got to see that last weekend. And so I wanted him to have the floor to be able to kind of talk about what's going on. And so anyways, with that being said, just got a message from Aaron. He thinks his connection finally bit the dust. Aaron, if you do watch this, thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate you coming on and some tough conversations there, and also some important conversations talking about everything else. Be sure to check the ticker at the bottom, folks. I can't say it enough. Aaron_Gossage Disc Golf on Instagram. Go check out the Discraft website. You can see all of his stuff, all of his gear. I just ordered some plastic myself, as well as the Goose hat you saw him wearing in the episode here. I'm sure if that bad, I think it's scheduled to deliver this weekend. So which means Tuesday afternoon, you're going to see the Goose hat on this noggin. I appreciate you guys tuning in. My name is Raul Herrera. Had Aaron Gossage with me. Really appreciate having him back on the show. Backyard Chains, brought to you by Backyard Sports. Have a good night.